In this video, let's have a look at some of the many things you can do to use content boxes to improve your blog content and your sales pages and landing pages. Hello, I'm Shane Malach from Thrive Themes, and in today's tutorial I want to show you live how I build several different content boxes. And as we go through these, I'll basically show you many of the different features in Thrive Architect that I'm making use of to create these content boxes, and also show you some best practices as well as examples of different content boxes for different purposes. So let's get started right away. I've got a page right here, and let's just start by dropping a content box here. And as you can see, first of all, a content box is just an empty container. And you can do many things here, so I'll start actually by duplicating this text and dragging it in here. And the content box disappears as soon as I do this. And when I click on the paragraph, I can then select the content box from the breadcrumbs again. So the content box doesn't have to be visible. It doesn't have to be styled. You can use it for things like positioning. So you can restrict the width, for example. You can move the content inside it around you. You can use the content box just as a container. But in this case, we are going to actually style the box. Let's start in the background by giving it a color. We'll just give it a color that makes it obvious, because the first thing I want to show is that, well, this doesn't look very nice, right? And it doesn't look very nice because there's no padding on the box. So if we go to the box, this is like the first thing to do is let's apply some inside padding on all sides. So I've linked the sides here, 30 on all sides. Now it starts looking like a content box, right? It has to have some space here between the edge and the content before it really looks like a box. And now what I'll do next, again, I'll leave this color for now, just so we can see what it looks like. So on the tablet view, it doesn't make a difference here. On the mobile view, what happens is that because of the amount of padding, the text becomes quite scrunched up. So on the mobile view, I would reduce this to maybe 10 pixels all around, or maybe something like 14, something like that. So there's still this box effect, but I don't want to restrict the width of the text too much, since the width is already overall quite restricted. So that's the first thing about content boxes. The first thing I always do when I want a styled content box is I add the inside padding and I adjust the inside padding on the mobile view. Now, this looks really ugly. So let's start with making something useful. Let's make a note box. So we'll have a note box. I'll go to the background color again, and I'll choose a light yellow, maybe slightly orange tone that's reminiscent of a sticky note. Okay, something like this. So I'll save that, and let's duplicate this text here and give it a title. So let's say quick note title. And we'll make the font size on this title larger, maybe make it bold, and also give it some spacing like this. Next, I will select the content box again. I'll go into typography and I'll change the font color. So as you'll know, when I change on the container, I'm selecting the content box and I'm making font changes or typography changes. That means that any text that is added inside the box, unless it is otherwise styled, will take on the styles from the container. And all I want is, I just don't want it to be too dark. This is a bit of a harsh contrast. So just make it a bit lighter, maybe like this. Apply that, and then as a final step, let's go all the way down here to shadows, and let's add a shadow. I'll add a shadow that goes straight down, that's 270, and I want to keep this really subtle. So again, I basically want to make this look a little bit like a sticky note. So that wouldn't be floating off the table like this, it would just be slightly, have this slight subtle drop shadow. So I will keep the values quite small here, maybe like this, and we'll make it a bit less obvious, maybe like this. All right, so that is our note. So now I've styled this. Like I said, we've checked. Let's double check, make sure this still looks good on a small screen. That looks good. Now would be the time to save it. So only once I've applied all my styles, and I've checked to make sure that it looks good on all screen sizes, now I would select the content box and go down to styles and templates and save it as a template, and I'd call it note box, let's say. Now I can save that, and now I can reuse this template by going to my elements here, content template, if I choose this, put it on the page, now the note box that I just saved is one of the available elements. So this is a useful template to create and then use, for example, in your blog posts for quick asides or quick interesting notes to break up the kind of wall of text effect in your content. So now that we've got the basics covered, let's rapid fire a few more different styles for different purposes of content boxes. So I'm not going to do the mobile part every time because we've already seen that. So let's go right ahead and let's create a template that we're going to use here. And I'll make a few duplicates of this because we can always use this. All right, content box. Let's make like a proper highlight box for something like a sales page or again, a blog post if you really want to make something stand out. So we can go with a strong kind of color, maybe a green like this. And here we definitely want the text inside to be white. So I go to the box typography, make it white. And then let's go to borders and corners and add a bit of rounding to the borders. That gives it a bit more of a box effect, makes it stand out from the rest a bit more as well. In this case, maybe I would keep this a bit smaller. And I'd probably also add a slight drop shadow here, kind of similar to what we did before. Something like this. And the cool thing about this template is that as a highlight box template, this is very reusable because we can just copy it and you can just change the color to whatever you need. So any dark color or any strong color shade here will look good as long as the text is still readable on it. You can really choose whatever color you want here and create different highlight boxes for different purposes. Another simple variation of this box is if we give it a border. So I'll take this content box, I'll go to the background, copy this color here, and then I'll take the background to white and give it a colored border instead, like this. Let me make that 2 pixels. Now let's create a version of this type of content box that has a title area in it. For this, I'll do the following. I will put a content box inside another content box. So I have my content box here. And I want another one inside of it. And on this one, I'll remove the top spacing here. So this content box, I want to have a green background. And this content box, the outside one, this one is the one I want to have a border color on, like this. Now, as you can see, let's also put a title into this part here. So this would be our feature box title. And once again, we can make sure the text in here is white like this. I can also do that directly on the text. Doesn't really matter. Let's increase the size and make it bold. Okay. Now you can see, well, we've got a bit of a problem because of all this spacing here that we don't want. And in here we have spacing. We don't have spacing that we do want. So what do we do about that? Well, let's go to the inside box first, the title box, so to speak. And let's give that some padding. Let's say 20 around. It's probably too much. Let's do 10 top and bottom, like this. Okay, that looks a bit better. Now we have to go to the outside box and remove the padding. That gives us the effect we want in terms of the background box here, but now the text is sticking to the sides like it did originally, and that's why we added the padding in the first place. So what do we do? Well, we can either add another box in here, or I can just apply the padding in this case to the text itself. So I can, let's say, give it 20 padding and probably a bit less on top, like this. So now I've added the padding to the text inside of the box. Now another thing about this is if I select the outside box, what I can do is, for example, if I add a shadow here, that works. That looks exactly like I'd want it to look. The shadow appears for both boxes, so to speak. But if I apply rounded corners, that doesn't work, or not the way we want. So let's say we have, let's make it a bit more obvious, 10 pixel rounded corners. As you can see, the top corners here are not rounded. So how do I do that? Well, I basically just have to apply top rounded corners to this box. So here, I'll give it 10 on the top right and 10 on the top left. And now we have the effect of a single rounded box with a title area. So let's make this a bit more interesting still and create something like a feature box that we use on a sales page or landing page to show off different product features. Let me reduce the text in here a little bit. And so we'll do a few things here. Let's take this box here and first of all, let's give it a title. And again, I'll just increase the font size a bit on this title and give it a bit of space below. All right, now the box itself, let's give it a border. Obviously there's many different ways in which we could style this. We'll just do, let's say, some light blue here. And I'll copy this color and let's make that 3 pixels. Okay, and let's also make it a bit rounded. And now to make this more interesting, let's add an icon. So I'll put an icon inside the box here and let's choose some icon. Don't want any top spacing on this. Now on this icon, what I want to do is, doesn't really matter the color. What I'm more interested in actually is the border. I'll give it the same border color and the same border thickness as the rest of the box. And then I want some inside padding here. Okay, so there's more space between the icon and the border around it, and then we'll give this a sufficiently large value to just make it a circle. I'll make this a bit larger because I want to add, I think I want this to be bigger, like this. Now I want to create an interesting effect, so I will remove the top padding here. So now the icon here sits right next to the top of the box, and then I'll move the box or the icon outside the box like this. We have -45 to compensate for that. To avoid this overlap, I'm going to select the box again and just give it more top margin like this. Now one last touch to make this look really good is to add a background on the icon, add a white background like this. So now it creates this effect as if it's a seamless border that goes around the icon and the box. Let's polish this up a bit further and I'll choose the content box again, go to typography. I want text inside here to be center aligned. And also let's give it a hover effect. So I'll go into the hover state and I'll choose my border and let's give it a different color like this on hover. And I'm also going to select the icon. Okay, I'm still in the hover state of the box, as you can see here. I'm in the content box hover state, but I selected the icon that's inside it and I will apply the new color here as well to the border. So now if I exit the state, so what happens now is that the hover effect applies both to the content box, the outside border, and the icon. Now what we can also do is we can make this box clickable. So you can add a link here to the entire box. And that would make for a good feature box for a sales page or landing page, because the hover effect implies that it's clickable, and then it is in fact clickable. The whole thing is clickable, not just a link inside it or a button inside it. So this would be an example of a feature box. All right, let's make another version of a feature box, just a different style, same kind of idea. I'm going to, so let's go here again. I have a new box. I'll give it the inside padding, and then let's copy over some of this stuff. I'll have a title inside. I'll have some text inside. As you can see, because the center line is not applied to this box, now the text is left aligned again. But I'm just going to apply the same styling here as well. Center line. And I also want an icon, but without the borders and all that stuff. So I'll add a new one. So let's add an icon like this. Let's give the icon a color this time and remove some more text here. Another thing I'd like to do, and I'll do this on the content box level as well, is I'll increase the font size. Whoa, that jumped to a larger number there, but let's go like this. Okay, slightly larger font size, maybe slightly less dark, like this. Now, to make this interesting, oh, this icon has top margin. I don't want that. Now, let's give this kind of a subtle, interesting look for a feature box by, let's start with a border, and I want a very subtle light gray border on this, like this. And then I want to add a shadow. And once again, I'm going to go for a pretty subtle kind of shadow. So maybe I can have a bit more blur, but not too much distance. And I want to make this really subtle. like this. All right, and then to make this look a bit more interesting, I want to apply uneven corners. So let's say we add a rounded corner. Actually, we can do more than that. Rounded corner here, bottom left, rounded corner top right. I think this is still a bit too dark, by the way. Let's make this more subtle, like this. All right. So there we have it, another type of feature box. And again, we could do the hover effect and all that as we did on the last one. Okay, let's do 2 more and get a little bit more wild with the styles that we apply here. So let's do once more, put some inside padding, put some text inside it, of course. And this time right away, let me put more padding on the sides like this. Now let's give it a gradient. And let's give it kind of a fiery gradient here. Let's go from a darkish orange. Oh, let's just save that and apply it right here to a lighter tone. Maybe like this. And we'll apply that. And now to make this one look a bit more interesting, stand out a bit more, let's go to decorations and add slanted edges on the side. So I select the side, go with slanted edge. Let's do the other direction here and a bit less. And then on the opposite side, I'll basically have the opposite slant. Change direction like this. Now here, probably, maybe I should make this white. It's a bit of a contrast issue. Maybe if I make it bold, it'll be fine. I could also add a bit of a drop shadow to the text to make it a bit more readable, although that can look a little tacky, so we have to be careful with that. Maybe like this. All right, that's pretty eye-grabbing content box as well. And then one more, let's do one with a background image. We haven't had that yet. And you can also do some interesting stuff with images. All right, carry over these text bits again. Here we go. And so let's start by adding a background image. So in the background style, I choose image. I'll have this city as a background, and in typography, I'll make the text white again. I'll make this text larger, not too large. Let's have a bit more text in here. Maybe make the padding a bit larger, like this. The text isn't very readable here because of the background image. So that's something we can fix here. So I want to make this a bit larger as well before we move on. So I want an overlay. And since the background here is purplish, I want to have an overlay that matches that. So I go back to my background settings here, and I'll add a gradient overlay. And again, I'll make that go straight down. And then let's find kind of a dark shade of purple. And I'll put this at maybe 90. And then apply the exact same thing here. But I'll make this a lot lighter or a lot more transparent. And now I'll just push this down. This should actually be 90 or maybe 80 or so. Okay. So I'll push this down so that below the text, where the text is, it's highly readable because I have mostly opaque overlay. But at the bottom, we can see a bit more. And in fact, we can strengthen this effect by adding more of a bottom padding. And then again, in my gradient, basically I can play with this a bit to see, how far down do I have to push this to make sure the text is readable, but we still see a hint of this background at the bottom a bit more clearly. And then let's make this even more interesting by adding an icon in here. I'll also, let me move this down a bit more to prepare for that. We'll add an icon in here and position it a bit more interestingly. So we've had some center aligned icons. Let's add an icon in here that is appropriately a building. So I think we can make the icon itself bright, and we'll give it a dark purple background. So we'll go with this dark purple tone here again. And then we definitely need to make it larger like this. We'll do the whole thing with the rounded corners again. And I'll give it a white outline that I also, I can, by the way, always click and drag here to change these values and see live what they look like. So I'll go like this. I want to make sure that there's no margins around this icon, because I'm going to position it in the top right corner here, and I'm going to use position absolute for this. So this is in advanced. Position absolute means that it will be positioned ironically relatively to the containing box, and I can choose where it is in relation to the containing box, and everything else on the canvas pretends like it's not there. So as you can see, everything, the text jumped right up as if this icon wasn't here. That is what position absolute does. So I want it to anchor to the top right corner here. So I choose this. And now I'll just move it around a bit to get it into the spot where I want it to be. So maybe here. So maybe 70 and 70 is good. Like this, I'll save that position. And I'll also, while we're at it, let's add a bit of rounding to the entire box here. There we go. So as you can see, rounded corners can also apply to stuff that has images inside. So there we go. That's another pretty attention-grabbing kind of feature box. I hope you found this useful and also inspiring to give you some ideas of how you can create and use your own content boxes throughout your content as well. Now, as a bonus, all of the content boxes that I just made in this video, slightly brushed up and made to look a little bit nicer, are available as a download in Thrive Architect as well, along with the templates of the, let's say, old style content boxes that were in Thrive Content Builder. To get these templates, you can load up a page and load a landing page template. And you'll find that one of the landing page templates is just a collection of all of these different content boxes. You can choose whichever ones you like and save them as templates to reuse wherever you want on your site. So I hope you enjoy that, and I hope you also have some fun creating and customizing your very own content boxes in Thrive Architect. As always, thank you for watching, and if you have any questions or thoughts to share, just leave a comment below.